Just to let you know, if you hear scurrying or something bumps the camera, cats. 2 of them, and they're chasing each other today, so sorry. Earlier this year, daughter Judy, an up-and-coming sewing pattern company, came under fire by their community for rolling out a new website and branding redesign. Parts of the new design are being very, some would say excessively, slow to roll out. The problem wasn't inconsistent fonts or missing product pages, but the erasure of half the brand's identity, inclusive sizing. Don't get me wrong, the plus-size patterns are still available for purchase, but the photos showed a distinct lack of plus-size bodies. It's been a few months since the relaunch, and most recent updates to the site are still not hitting the mark for many customers. The change was noticed by members of the sewing community and remarked on because plus-size representation in sewing, and fashion in general, has always been an issue. I recently made a video about some of the plus-size inclusive sewing brands I've encountered, and the entire time I was writing and rewriting what I wanted to say, I was editing out small recurring rants about the big 4+ pattern company. Simplicity, McCall's, Butterick Vogue, and their comparatively newer acquisitions or sub-brands, Berta Style, Know Me, and New Look. The big 4+'s issues with plus-size representation and inclusive sizing has been an ongoing battle. A battle that seems to spill out onto the independent companies either using the Big 4+ as a template for their own business, or in response to the Big 4's ambivalence. But whether it's commercial companies or independents, this has been a problem on a large scale for years. And no, I'm not apologizing for the pun. It brings up some interesting questions though. Who does inclusive sewing and representation affect? How much plus is plus enough? Is sewing inclusive, particularly during the present time? What should we expect from designers and brands? Does the size of the company matter when discussing the size of the customer? How can brands be more inclusive and promote plus-size representation, and why does any of this matter? Well, let's talk about it. In case you haven't noticed, I'm plus size. I'm just going to give you a brief look at my own personal experience with plus sizes and plus size sewing in particular, because it's colored my outlook on sewing. Also knitting and other crafting too, as a plus size person. I've been overweight or obese since I was about 7 years old. My family moved from the west coast of British Columbia to a suburb of Toronto, and my mother was so miserable she ate her feelings. All the way across Canada, which is a pretty big country. She was able to get her weight under control with Jazzercise and Melba Toast, the early 80s equivalent of Zumba and Sawdust, but it started a pattern of behavior that would translate to a lifetime of disordered eating for me. I was a fat girl during the fashion-conscious 80s and 90s, and it made shopping for me really difficult, particularly if I wanted to fit in with the other kids. Mum would often say, if we can't find it in the store, we should be able to make it. And so she made me clothing she thought was stylish, and probably was for a 30-something mom in the early to mid-80s, but not for what would now be considered a tween. I learned to dread Mum's sewing because, while she could talk up the individual pieces of clothing as fun and stylish, I stood out like a sore thumb wearing them. To the point where I was really happy when Edition L, Penningtons, and Torrid became a thing, because not only could I go to a website and see plus-size bodies wearing plus-size clothes, I could finally choose clothing to dress my age. I did eventually pick up sewing as one of my many crafty skills, and my gateway was costuming. I didn't fit any of the offerings from the Big 4+, so I used information from blogs to make corsets, stays, and Tudor-era swag. The Shakespeare in Love dress had just made sewing slightly cooler amongst my friends at the local Vampire LARP, which is live-action roleplay. When I took up knitting, I found that sweater knitting was the domain of the slender. Larger bust sizes and accommodation for larger bellies, hips, and arms was sparse. I think the first real sign things were changing was Isolde Teague's Little Red in the City knitting book. It showcased the designs on a plus-sized model, and while I haven't gotten around to making any of the sweaters yet, after many years, I did purchase the book. One of the benefits knitting and crochet has over sewing is a centralized social network devoted to yarn crafts, Ravelry. If you want to find a pattern, you look it up in the database, and entries span everything from new releases to vintage finds added by avid crafters. With Ravelry, you could look up a pattern, find out where it was sold, whether independently or through Ravelry itself, and see examples of the pattern as made by other crafters. With the help of Ravelry and a very engaged user base, pattern sizing for plus sizes has shifted immensely. Some designers have dragged their feet and been a bit surly over the peer pressure, but as a plus-size person, I like that I can participate. If, on the off chance I can ever get to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, more difficult with the current political situation, I should be able to knit myself a Rhinebeck sweater. Sewing doesn't have that centralized source of peer pressure, so change occurs gradually. Very gradually. Costuming in particular still lags behind modern clothing for expanded sizes. There are a few companies catching up, but more often than not you'll find plus sizes in certain niches are kind of limited. They all use the same excuses, whether historic or modern. Things like not wanting to condone or encourage people to be or stay fat, that it's too hard to grade up for larger plus sizes because of the variety of ways plus size bodies store that fat, or that fat people didn't exist during the era the plus size person is costuming for, which kinda ties into the excuse that the garment won't look as nice graded up. I assure you that plus size people, including expanded plus sizes, have existed throughout history. Straight size people store fat differently too, which is why we learn how to make adjustments, and clothing is a necessity, not a reward for balancing your calorie intake and output. We need to be able to clothe the bodies we have, not the bodies we would like to have but do not currently possess. And what is costuming, at least historical costuming, but clothing? Necessary and or decorative from another time. Before I get into the questions I mentioned earlier, I'd just like to thank my supporters. First, my Patreon and channel members. It's thanks to you guys that I can talk about the pattern industry, at least from the customer end. I'd also like to thank my viewers. I'd love it if you could stick with me till the end of the video, but in the meantime, perhaps you'd be so kind as to boop the like button, maybe check and see if you're subscribed. Engagement is what puts kibble on the table for the cats that are currently running around the house like mad little demons. So, who does inclusive sewing and representation affect, and how much plus is plus enough? Well, humans are wired to look for certain patterns. It's one of the reasons why we jump at shadows and swear we see ghosts. It's why we see faces in marbled bathroom tiles when we're taking a shower and not wearing our glasses. Basically, we look for traces of ourselves. When I go to a website, I notice when there's nobody like me on the page. And I don't mean exactly like me down to my delightfully girlish pear-shaped form, but to be blunt, not skinny. And if you ask plus-size folks what skinny is, you'll probably get a sliding scale depending on how long they've been fat and to what degree. Hi! Am I gonna go over there and beat a cat? Kitten. Somebody's eating masking tape. Hi! Please don't eat the masking tape. Thank you. To be clear, I'm not looking at what color the model is. I'm very well aware of the fact that I'm a white person who burns to a crisp on a 5-minute walk away from shelter. There are plenty of white models out there, and I'd like other folks to have representation too. There are many lovely models of color who represent my size better than I do. When I look for someone like me, I'm looking for someone who maybe has large legs or prominent fat on their quads. I've often felt there was too much width in some of the straight barrel and wide leg styles, so do the pant legs look comparatively proportionate to both the plus and the straight size models? Maybe they're carrying more fat up front, so their pants don't lie flat over their stomach. This is a problem I have. How does that look? Does it bunch weirdly or lie relatively smooth until the curve of the stomach to the crotch? What's the rise look like? Did the designer prefer a low hip and thus things look a bit boxy or cause accidental camel toe? Maybe I'm looking for how the bodice fits. One of the problems I often have with plus size clothing is there's enough room in the bust, but the armholes are huge and sloppy, or vice versa. How do the arms fit? Do the sleeves have some ease, or are they tight? Tight arms are a sensory trigger for me because I've put on so many badly fitting coats that make it difficult for me to move. What's the neckline like? Does it gape? Does it plunge embarrassingly low? I've had a few times when I've needed to sew part of a neckline closed because a shirt just opened nearly to my navel. How does it fit across the belly? How does it fit across the shoulders and the back? Am I going to need to size down for my shoulders and make adjustments or pinch out the fabric? Am I going to need a special bra to make this top? I ask that last one because correctly fitting bras are more expensive and harder to find for larger plus sizes. If I'm going to need a strapless bra or a backless bra because of where the back bodice or armhole sits on a larger plus size model, I may have to reconsider the pattern or see whether the garment can be layered. Obviously, Bearing all this in mind, seeing a garment or an outfit by a designer on a model in the higher plus ranges will be of benefit for me. I might not see my exact size and shape, but I should be able to get a good look at construction and drape. A single picture of a low straight size model doesn't give me that information, particularly if that straight sized model is slim hipped, slender waisted, has a flat butt, and no need for a bra. And I'm not saying any of that to be mean, I'm saying those are traits shared by folks with less body fat to deal with. And when put in slightly more complimentary terms, are essentially things our current beauty industry holds as ideals. As a larger plus size person, even a picture of an average size model, around a 16 or an 18, can be similarly misleading. That's information I'd want available for 3, possibly 4 sizes. Petite, if available, if not the lower end of the straight size chart, the average size of a modern person, so probably around a 16, and someone towards the larger end of plus sizes, maybe between a 26 and 34. Is it necessary for all views of a pattern to have samples made in all sizes? No. You can mix and match. If you have a button-down shirt and a variant that ties at the waist, make one for your straight or average size, one for your plus size. Straight leg or flares? Same thing. Would it be nice to see all variations in all sizes? Sure, but if you need to save a few dollars between photo sessions, spread out your views between your size ranges and fill in the blanks later. Of course, when it comes to pant legs, I've recently been more aware of how the same style of leg translates to different sizes, so that might be a garment requiring a bit more thought. One of the comments I've seen on Reddit and Instagram when looking up the daughter Judy fiasco is that people asking for plus size representation are just too demanding, and even if they got what they were asking for, they'd want more. And all I can really say to that is that when you have nothing, something looks pretty good. Do I need a plus size model of every size offered and every shape variation? No. The bare bones for me, personally speaking, would be someone in my general size range, somewhere in the larger plus sizes for all the reasons that I mentioned a few moments ago. To me, that criticism speaks of privilege, being close enough to the sizes already represented that someone asking for something outside that boundary is overreach. They don't realize their own privilege of being able to see or anticipate their own fit issues from the models already displayed. Or maybe it's because they're protective of the designer or the company. They feel some sort of parasocial relationship. Social media can definitely heighten those feelings. Dogpiling certainly does happen. I think that part of the problem is that social media tries to take the place of an actual honest-to-God's conversation with the target, and if they're slow to respond or too shy or terrified to make the wrong move, it's seen as bad faith. So, midway through this video, of course, that's what I'm trying to avoid here. I just want a conversation about plus-size inclusivity and representation, not a dog pile. If someone wants to know who could benefit from representation and inclusiveness, the answer is all of us. And we need the bare minimum of effort. Is sewing inclusive, particularly during the present time? Well, sewing is much more inclusive. Big 4+ sizing and representation is, as much as I hate to admit it, better than it was for me growing up. But not by much. Their sizing and representation has always been intermittent, erratic, and unreliable. And I'm firmly of the opinion that all patterns offered should be available in expanded sizes for both petite and plus persons. I've known more than one petite person who had to shop in the kids section of a store, much to their embarrassment. It's hard to look like a young professional, or middle-aged professional, when you have to sift through some of the unicorn barf we happily display on our young, hopefully with their consent. A lot of independent pattern designers have taken on this challenge, and you can hear me ramble on about it in this video. If the link's not up there, you might find it on the screen at the end of the video. The small and large companies I discussed for the most part launch full-size ranges for each of their designs and are in the process of building libraries of basics and standout patterns to rival the big 4+. There are a couple that specialize in plus sizes over straight sizes, which is a refreshing bit of turnabout. Do I wish the big 4+ would offer all their patterns for all their sizes? Yes. Do I think it's possible? Yes. I think if they reduced the amount of offerings per season, charged more per pattern, and had someone dedicated to updating older patterns, we could have some amazing basics, formal wear, costumes, and vintage offerings. I'd recommend starting with the most popular stuff that isn't currently available in plus size. It's the same advice I'd give any company, honestly. For instance, Tilly and the Buttons and Deer and Doe still have some smaller size selections that could and or should be sized up. Maybe delaying a new pattern launch for a bit and relaunching one of the older patterns with updated sizing every few months might be an option. I'm happy to see inclusive sizing taking a stand and becoming more standard, particularly as we live in an age where the ubiquity of fast fashion and its styles mean we can't just strap ourselves into a corset or add padding to attain a specific silhouette. I mean, I guess you could do some surreptitious padding if you're a talented enough sewist, but that's more likely to be useful for tailored work than, say, altering your jeans and t-shirt. What should we expect from designers and brands, and does the size of the company matter when discussing the size of the customer? Well, I'm lumping these topics together, and the reasons may become more obvious as I talk this out. I think we should expect the bare minimum, but work towards a best attempt. Nobody's ever going to get it perfect, particularly right out of the gate. Obviously, things will scale differently if I'm comparing the Big 4 Plus to a large pattern brand, a small pattern brand, or an individual with a side hustle. So let's look at the Big 4 versus Cashmerette versus Sew House 7 versus Tiana Herring. With the Big 4 Plus, I see a vast archive of patterns with multiple categories. Depending on when you purchase patterns and in what format, I've seen pricing anywhere between approximately $4.99 to $16.99. That seems to be about average. Not all sizes are included in the pattern, and some aren't available at all, which is something they really need to work on. Format is intermittent. Some patterns are available as tissue print only, some as digital only, some as both. Digital options are also erratic. You can often find print at home, but A0, copy shop, and projector formats aren't always included. Representational material often shows one model and an illustration. Sometimes there are multiple pattern entries for the same pattern, just different size ranges or different formats, which makes their site challenging to navigate. The Big 4 Plus generally prefers models that look proportionate, so you're less likely to find an extreme plus size. Any community photos, social media, or in-house promotion are kept to their own pages and don't interact with the product pages. There are exceptions to these trends, but they're few and far between. Shout out to designers like Aronica B. Cole, who challenge the Big 4 paradigm of style versus size. I'm not sure how often they launch new patterns, whether it's seasonally or monthly. Generally speaking, it's often feast or famine with the Big 4 Plus. Cashmerette has a sizable offering of clothing. There's business wear, casual clothing, accessories, and formal attire. No costumes or housewares or menswear, but they do serve their own niche and they do a thorough job of it. Patterns and pattern packs tend to run between $25 and $30. You get all the available sizes in the package. I believe they've done tissue print patterns, but they're most widely available in digital format. Digital usually includes print at home and copy shop. They're dipping their toes into projector formatting, if I'm not mistaken. Representation is fantastic. Cashmerette attempts to have at least 3 models, smaller, average, and larger sizes on their size scale. They often include pictures of the models interacting or posed together so you can get a better idea of the sizes or scales involved. Founder Jenny Rushmore is one of her own models, and it's a fantastic part of their branding. If they're unable to get 3 models, they generally skew to an average plus size rather than one of the extremes. If you want to see the makes from customers, links are available to the product hashtag on Instagram. Sew House 7 offers digital and printed patterns. They're a smaller company, so still growing their product base. Prices run between $16 and $21 per pattern and include all sizes unless otherwise specified. Digital files include print at home, copy shop, and projector. Representation is good. Peggy, the owner-operator, is one of the more slender models. They skew to larger average sizes for most shots and have been including more large-framed folks as their business grows. They generally trend toward giving a pattern page for both size ranges, so each is treated equally. You can find a link to their Instagram on the pattern page to see the customer makes. And Tiana Herring has an Etsy store with her viral juniper dress and the new Judy jumpsuit. Price is around $22 and change for the digital format, which includes print at home, copy shop, and projector files. Tiana flips the size chart paradigm on its head by putting the larger sizes first and the smaller sizes at the end of the chart. All sizes are available with the download. Model shots are informal and I believe come from either testers or Instagram. They showcase a fantastic range of bodies from small, medium, and larger sizes. I'm not seeing any links to the Instagram hashtag, but many purchasers have linked photos to their makes on the Etsy page itself. To sum up all of this information, all the independent designers I mentioned today were able to include all their sizes in one package for a reasonable price. All offer digital formats with printed home and copy shop files. Projector files are still a relatively new tool in the home sewist's arsenal, so I'm giving a little leeway there. All include low-end plus-size representation as a default, filling in larger and smaller sizes as they can. All have some acknowledgement of their customer base or community for potential customers to look up or participate in. These are business decisions that make sense to me. They value their work at a certain minimum dollar amount, and you get the ability to grade between sizes or remake a beloved garment if you gain or lose weight. You can see how the garment hangs on a variety of people, whether it's through the designer's website or their community. And their involvement with their community suggests they keep up a conversation with those same people who have expectations of the brand. The Big 4 Plus, in comparison, is a corporate silo. They put out multiple patterns at least seasonally. They undervalue their work. They don't design for all sizes, and they don't include all sizes in the package, which means you have to buy multiple size packages if you're between sizes or gain or lose weight. They limit the amount of samples made and models used. They don't include customer makes or hashtags to individuals on Instagram or YouTube, because if you go looking on YouTube, you'll find channels that are devoted to making new Big 4 patterns. What this basically means is no community involvement on the part of the company. So this is why dealing with the Big 4 is frustrating. There's no discussion. You get the patterns we give you and you'll be happy with it, is the message that I get. And because they put out multiple undervalued patterns, at least for the straight sizes, they don't see the value of including the folks who need clothing the most. Folks who have to work harder to find clothes that fit. Could you two maybe stop, please? Nope. How can brands be more inclusive and promote plus-size representation, and why does any of this matter? Bear in mind, I'm not an MBA, aka Master of Business Administration. I'm an avid multi-crafter who dropped out of art college, got a multimedia diploma, and had parents who owned their own businesses. My experience and outlook comes from participating in creative communities, watching businesses come and go, and the work my parents put into their own ventures. So these are suggestions from that perspective. Number 1, value your work appropriately. If you undervalue your product, people will see it as cheap and replaceable. The independent pattern community has shown that people will pay significantly more for their patterns if you give them value. So do that. In the case of the Big 4 Plus, if they manage to ride out the recent bankruptcy situation, stop having $2 sales every few weeks. Fill in the missing size ranges, include all the sizes in one digital package. Joann's is gone unless storefronts are selling tissue prints, so start normalizing the transition to digital media and provide formats that your customer base are using. Printed home, copy shop, and projector. Oh, hi! You're funny. Don't get in bed with one of those proprietary projector companies either, where you need a subscription to access the files. You want everyone who has a projector to be able to use it, and pay you for the privilege. In the case of a brand like Daughter Judy, pardon my French here, but stop fucking around with tiered pricing. Set your price and stick to it. If I go to your site and see the price is $17, it should stay $17 when I go to check out. I say this because I bought a pattern, it said $17, and when I checked out, it was $24. Was that the exchange rate? A gratuity? The legendary fat tax? I have no idea. Set a price. Stick with it. That way you're not confusing or alienating your customer base, and you're not coming up short at the end of the month for you or your business's needs. You're running a company, not a clubhouse. For any company offering both straight and plus sizes, your new catchphrase is medium pimpin'. Skew your default model size to the average size customer. For most people, that'll be around a size 16, which is the end of the straight sizes and the beginning of plus. Don't care that 20 or 30 years ago that was a size 12. Today it's a size 16. That's your default. If you're only going to have one model, make her average, because more people are going to see themselves in her. We all want champagne. We drink diet soda instead. We all want glamour. We sometimes have to compromise with polyester. I grew up in the decades where the catchphrases were that one could never be too rich or too thin, or heroin chic. Well, here's the reality. Your customer base are probably late 20 to 30-somethings looking for their own style, and middle-aged women. We aren't impressed by tiny scowling models ripped from the website of Rachel Comey. if we even know who that is. How many of us are even reading Vogue anymore? It's just a brand name that speaks of glamour, but for a very, very narrow section of people. Don't limit yourself or your brand. Think outside the box. Think medium. We're more impressed with things that interest us. Garment sewing is probably at its most popular place in the last 2 generations, and why is that? Maybe because aesthetics are all the rage and people either don't want to support fast fashion or can't find that aesthetic at a storefront. Maybe because they're tired of clothes that don't fit properly. Or maybe because they can't find their preferred aesthetic in their size at all. I mean, do I like the look of Sondaflor? Sure. But they don't make my size, and if they did, I couldn't afford it. So instead, I'll make a dress from Twig and Tail. Instead of buying some atrociously expensive linen naive dress, which again does not come in my size, I'll make one of the lovely, historically inspired silver saga dresses out of bed sheets. They're floaty because they use so much extra fabric. My extra 2 or 3 inches in the bust probably won't be noticed, and if they are, I'll adjust the pattern. When it comes to daughter Judy, I'm most excited for the pants. I wear pants more than skirts or dresses. Store-bought pants never fit right. I hear daughter Judy's pants are cream of the crop, but the only models I see at present are within straight sizing. I have to go to Instagram to find anyone near my size range. Most folks won't do that. In fact, because I'm new to daughter Judy as a customer, I originally didn't know they offered plus sizes. I saw something about it on Instagram, thought I'd check it out, and not seeing a single plus size model at the time, thought it was straight size only. If I hadn't caught sight of the size chart, I would have bounced off the site so hard your head would spin. How many other customers have shrugged, said I guess it's not for me, and moved on? That's leaving money on the table for a company that offers extended plus sizes. It's not just a matter of the community complaining at that point, it's a matter of not gaining new customers. I had a similar experience recently with Itch to Stitch. Some viewers left some absolutely wonderful comments about the company on my last video. Went to the site, and I get it. They're a one-person operation, so they're the only model. I'd highly recommend that when they get a few dollars, having pictures taken of a plus-size friend. Or maybe request well-shot photos of pattern testers, or maybe even looping in photos from Instagram. Cashmerette has it pegged with solo shots interspersed with shots of women of different sizes together. The colors are good, the lines of the clothing are easy to see. It's also friendly and shows invitation and acceptance. I've noticed Soho 7 have been taking photos of models interacting too. It's a good look. It shows partnership between your size ranges in a very symbolic and tangible way. Twig and Tail include photos of their pattern testers, and nothing makes me happier than seeing Amy of Melbourne modeling the new Lorien skirt. Chef's kiss, 10 out of 10 no notes. From the information available, the owner of daughter Judy, Chelsea Carson, was excited for the brand refresh. She wrote a Substack article delving into how she worked with a professional marketing company on the themes, layout, and design elements, and how her previous photos used less than ideal posing and colors to showcase her designs. She mentioned that the brand refresh was expensive, models and photographers need to be compensated, studio time purchased, and new sample garments in the model sizes made. Chelsea apologized for the lack of plus-size representation and reassured her customers that while it might take a couple of months, that representation was right around the corner. Unfortunately, the previous pictures didn't fit with her new themes and color scheme, and she couldn't reuse the previous samples as they'd been sold or donated prior to her move. Having moved a few times, I can understand wanting to reduce the amount of baggage. Added to that, the new samples were being made more mindful of fit and drape, and the colors and themes used in the brand design. I think that if Chelsea had started with an average-sized model to begin with, she wouldn't be facing the pushback she's currently seeing from her community. New photos came with a recent pattern collection launch, and the community was disappointed to find she'd chosen another small-sized model and an average-sized model. Still no larger sizes. There are a lot of folks saying daughter Judy doesn't care about their plus-size customer base or that Chelsea isn't listening to her community. I don't think the first statement is true, and when it comes to the second, communities have a tendency to dogpile, so I think she's probably terrified. My thought? She's working with a professional marketing group, and I think they're giving her the wrong advice for her size, her community, and her customer base. As a former web designer, I can say the website isn't anything special, and I don't say that to minimize any effort or research. It's just a Shopify site, and it looks like a lot of other Shopify sites. I don't see any of Chelsea's actual personality in it, and I think she may be being overcharged for the privilege of looking something like commercial brands she's worked with in the past. The pricing scheme? Gotta go. Again, stop dicking around with pricing, value your work. The straight size models are, again, just like the brands listed on her About page. They apparently don't speak to the community who want to see medium and larger sizes by default. That would be my approach on future launches. Skew back to medium large and bring in straight size models when you have the money to do so. It's not pandering. It's letting your community know that you're listening, and it's signaling to future plus size customers that their money is welcome at your business. Finally, don't save up your patterns and launch a collection. Stagger your launches. I saw a lot of comments about a summer collection launching at the midpoint of summer. I'm getting fast at sewing. I can get 1, perhaps 2 pieces done in a week or 2. But this is part of my job. Most home sewists will take anywhere from a day to a month or more to make a single garment. Sometimes longer. Those cute Dern shorts, which are not for me because pleats don't flatter my stomach, probably won't get worn until like late summer or early fall. So launch your new patterns sooner. Use the money from them to pay some of the bills while you're getting your community's concerns addressed. I guess the hint there is to start working on your fall releases now and maybe launch the showstopper in late August, early September, instead of mid-October when the season of wear is just passing its peak. I understand scheduling these things is hard. I'm thinking of my September and October content, and I was alarmed to find we'd passed the midpoint of July. Either way, your customers want to buy from you and tell your friends how wonderful you are. If those friends go to your site and there's little reason to think that your product will suit them, they just won't buy it. Don't miss that opportunity. I don't know what the solution is for the Big Four. Personally, I think that if they survive the corporate restructuring and selling that seems to be plaguing creative businesses the past couple of years, they might want to reconsider their own business strategy and possibly start thinking more like an independent. I also think they need to stop yeeting things into the proverbial Disney vault. Bring back the Shakespeare in Love dress. There was a cute little retro sundress that I had to buy in paper format and haven't used yet because I'm right on the cusp of sizing. Bring that back. Digitize that stuff and keep making money from it. Bring back original vintage drafts. Size them up. Make friends with folks at different pattern archives and resale shops and maybe re-release patterns from the 1800s through the 1980s. Would I like to make the same butterick dress my great-grandmother wore? Sure would. I'm pretty sure my nibblings would like to make the same outfits their great-grandmothers wore in the 40s and 50s. I don't think anyone has enough tolerance for the shoulder pads of the 80s, though. That might be a bridge too far. But there's hope in the sewing industry. I want to see more folks buying patterns and making garments on their own, making their own aesthetics, and hopefully including all the folks standing on the sidelines. Again, if you made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, boop the like button and maybe see if you're subscribed. I'd like to thank my channel members and Patreon supporters because you guys help me afford the ability to compare pattern company offerings. You have no idea how much I appreciate the assist. My supporters are also fantastic people in their own right and give me lots of helpful feedback behind the scenes. They're often the people I think of when I'm doing my very own medium pimpin'. And ye gods, what a stupid phrase. And it's kind of an in-joke amongst my friends. I think when the game Rock Band was popular, that was the name of our band. Fun times. And yes, sewing videos coming soon. I'm gonna go edit that now.